All right, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the First Lady, Melania Trump, along with his daughter, Ivanka, and Jared Kushner behind him, arriving at the Western Wall just now. This is an incredibly significant moment. The President is along with the rabbi of the Western Wall. You see the two of them together, the First Lady and the President. This is very significant for a number of reasons, namely because this is the first time that a sitting U.S. president has visited the Western Wall, one of the holiest sites in all of Judaism. As you see there being read something right there. And let's bring back in our panel in David Gregory, because David, he is with the First Lady right now, but as is customary, it is believed that he will go and approach the wall separately on the path that only men are allowed to go separately, or does it? And the White House has said in their readout that Melania Trump will enter from a different location.
Yes, I want to, and I'll get to that in just a minute. I want to point out, I'm presuming what the president is looking at. It looks like it's a map. So what they're showing is presumably what the temple looked like thousands of years ago, before it was destroyed by the Romans. And so what is in front of the president is the western retaining wall to the temple, to the second temple. And so you can see there's wonderful books called Israel Then and Now that show what it all actually looked like. And the retaining wall is just, is all that's left of that beautiful Jerusalem stone that actually captures. As a matter of fact, that is that book. It's called Jerusalem Then and Now, and you can overlay pictures of what the temple actually looked like and get a sense of where you are with the Western Wall. So that's the book that he's holding up there now, which gives you a very good sense of that. Yes, this has been a fraught issue within Judaism. So only men can pray at the Kotel, at the Western retaining wall. Women have to pray in a separate area. I do believe there's an area where men and women can pray together, but it's not actually at the wall. It's in the plaza area. And this has been an area that's been disputed and fought over. There seemed to be some movement toward an agreement, but it hasn't happened yet. So you'll probably see a separation of the men and the women here. But again, the president approaching what is the heartbeat of Judaism around the world, the holiest place for Jews to go and pray, to feel a sense of the divine presence. And it occurs one day before Yom Yerushalayim, which is Hebrew for Jerusalem Day, which marks 50 years since the reunification of Jerusalem, when this part of what was left of the Great Temple was captured by Israelis.
And David Gregory, as we watch, the president has now separated from the women in the group, from the First Lady, from Ivanka Trump, and he is with the men now, including the rabbi of the Western Wall, Shumel Rabinovich. He is approaching the wall, and after he was given those instructions and looked at that map, as you see, and he's being told, we believe, the history, the significance of the Western Wall. You see his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, behind him there. He just stepped out of the frame, but that is significant, of course, because Jared Kushner is who this president has tapped to lead in the U.S. role when it comes to trying to negotiate a peace accord between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Let me bring in the rest of the panel as well. David Rode, this is a moment that has not happened before.
It is. It's historic, and it's impressive that he's sort of making this gesture, and it's being well handled, I think, by the Israelis. The fact that Netanyahu is there is a wise step of the Israeli government.
That he's not Netanyahu is not there,
yes.
And that has a lot of political significance.
Correct.
Because they don't want to make it appear as though the U.S. is choosing sides in this disputed territory.
Yes, a lot of the sort of bravado of the campaign, the calls that he was going to immediately move the embassy to Jerusalem, has been reversed, and this is an example of that, where he does not want Netanyahu to be with him because it could incite Palestinian protests, and that he's trying to keep the situation calm.
This is also a president who, throughout his campaign, pledged that the United States would be what he would call a better friend to Israel, more supportive of Israel. Obviously, former President Barack Obama, largely criticized by many for that. He did go to the Western Wall when he was a sitting senator, not though as president. And on his first trip, President Obama, to the Middle East, he did not go to Israel, which is notable. And this president is going there directly from Saudi Arabia, which is also notable, as he walks by himself up to the Western Wall. Let's listen. All right, it looks like we lost that shot, which is what happens when you're dealing with live communication. We're going to work on getting that back. But David Gregory, to you, All right, we have it back. David Gregory, weigh in on your thoughts as we look at the president there up against the Western Wall. The question was whether he was going to insert a prayer or not. David.
Which is typical to write something on a sheet of paper and to try to find a spot within those huge pieces of Jerusalem stone to insert into the wall. We'll see if he does that. But this is it's a solemn moment for a sitting U.S. president to honor the holiest site in the world for Judaism, for Jews. It is a fraught gesture because while it's very important for Jews, it's also very important for Israelis that the president is being seen at a site in a disputed part of Jerusalem, right? The Israelis believe this is part of Israel. America, the U.S. government, does not recognize East Jerusalem as part of Israel. And yet the president is affirming the Jewish character of Jerusalem and therefore the Jewish character of Israel by recognizing that Judaism's most holy site is there in Jerusalem. It would be a final status issue for negotiation, but it is really in the heart of Israel and certainly for all Jews.
Yaakov, to you, as we watch the president as he walks away from that solemn moment that he had by himself at the Western Wall, it's also notable when you look at the larger context of the Middle East and when you look at the position that the United States under this president is taking towards Iran, the big shift from the more collaborative approach that the Obama administration took just in terms of inking the nuclear agreement. This is a president that is signaling both in Saudi Arabia, now in Israel, that we together as nations have a common enemy in Iran.
Without a doubt, and I think that that's a big motif of the trip here, and that's one of the big messages that he's trying to send to Israel, as well as to the rest of the region, as we saw in Riyadh. But just one thing that I want to clarify, there are actually 3 plazas at the Western Wall, one for men, one for women, and one for egalitarian pluralistic prayers. And yes, he went into the main plaza and separated from his wife, which is in line with Orthodox, the more traditional tradition within Judaism, as David pointed out. But to the larger context here of this trip, you have a president that's sending a message to Israel. I stand with you at your holiest site. I have your back. You have a president who went and met with the Arab and Muslim heads of state and said we have to join forces and fight terror. And basically he's trying to needle this thread here between Israel and the Gulf states, between Israel and the Sunni states that it does not yet have formalized, normalized ties with, and say to them, look, King Salman in Saudi Arabia, he wants peace between you and the Palestinians. You want peace with the Palestinians. Why don't we try to make that happen so we can actually create some sort of normalcy here in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, but also would have a wider impact on the entire region.
It's also notable, as I bring in Sarah Murray, who's traveling with the president, as well as Oren Lieberman, our correspondent in Jerusalem. Oren, this administration had a major dust-up over the Western Wall just a week ago, and now they are trying to clean that up.
And they still are, but they've done so with no effort or no clear policy on where exactly the Western Wall is. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the Western Wall is in Jerusalem. That's a meaningless statement. Of course it's in Jerusalem. The question is, where is Jerusalem? Is it in Israel? Is it in the West Bank? Now, this all started a couple of weeks ago with the preparations for this visit as U.S. and Israeli officials were meeting here. Israeli officials were trying to make sure the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, would be with Trump at the Western Wall, and then that there would be a live broadcast put out Trump of the wall. U.S. officials snapped back, saying essentially this isn't your territory. The Western Wall is in the West Bank. The Israelis were stunned. In a statement they put out, they said they immediately sought clarification from the White House, and the White House offered only a partial clarification, saying that's not actually the policy of the White House or the Trump administration. But they never said what is. They never settled that, and they never gave the answer the Israelis wanted, which is that the Western Wall is definitively in Israel. So that remains a question here. And again, it seems the Trump administration has realized the sensitivity of trying to give a definitive answer there outside of negotiations, outside of Israelis and Palestinians sitting down, perhaps with someone else in the room, the Americans or some of the Arab states, and trying to decide that together. To unilaterally make that decision prejudges one of the most sensitive parts of the conflict, and that perhaps is why you're seeing an administration that hasn't yet offered definitive clarity on where they see the Western Wall.
And for people just joining us, you're looking at what just happened moments ago. History has been made. The first sitting U.S. president to visit the Western Wall is President Donald Trump. Presidents have gone when they are not in office. Barack Obama went when he was a sitting U.S. senator, but not as president. David Gregory, to Oren's point about the U.S., even after that dust-up, or more than a dust-up, enraging the Israelis with a member of the administration saying that the Western Wall is in the West Bank just about a week and a half before this trip. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, does he expect more from this president on that front, or is this president taking the line of not choosing those sides? Is that expected by this prime minister?
Well, I think he may like it. I don't know that he's expecting it. I mean, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has in Donald Trump, the U.S. president, an ally of a different order, right? I think he's going to be able to get along with Trump in a way that he was not with President Obama. There are substantive differences with regard to Iran. Here you have Trump coming in and saying, like Netanyahu believes, that Iran is the focal point of the danger in the region that is posed to the United States, to Israel, and to allies throughout the region, largely Sunni state allies. That means that Netanyahu and Trump are aligned. I think in terms of the very sensitive particularities, what you have here is a larger point to be made, and that is that, you know, Trump as a candidate was talking about Islam being a threat to America. He comes to Saudi Arabia and makes a much more measured speech, talking about Islam not being the enemy. He's coming to Israel, backtracking on his promise to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He goes to visit the Western Wall, which is a powerful symbol to send about the Jewish nature of Jerusalem and Israel. Remember, Israel as a Jewish state, that is the key part of negotiations with Palestinians, that its Jewishness would be affirmed. Here, the president is not doing so with the Israeli prime minister. So he's sending a strong signal, but still pulling back from any major change in U.S. policy. In other words, Donald Trump is being very careful here to stick to the tradition.
I should note, I think it is significant that the Israelis did, and the Israeli cabinet did make some significant and important gestures towards the Palestinians just ahead of this president's visit. I mean, easing up their movement restrictions, trying to open up a little bit more economic activity and economic growth for the Palestinians. How significant is that, the timing that they made those gestures ahead of the president? I
think that is important, and I think Yaakov can speak to this as well. I think what the Netanyahu government wants to do is send some signals to the Trump administration. Look, we're going to work with you here. You want to pursue a big peace deal? You know, we're going to show that we'll make some measures to do that. You know, the much trickier issues have to do with settlement policy. It was one of the reasons why Netanyahu got his back up so early in the Obama administration, because they took a strong stance on settlement policy right away. Here, Trump has been a little bit softer on that. So in this way, I think Netanyahu recognizes that in Trump, he's got somebody who's more like-minded, that he can work with, who's more aligned with his priorities with regard to Iran, although Trump has not abandoned the nuclear deal that was set under the Obama administration. So I think that Netanyahu wants to give some space and show some goodwill to keep the administration close to them.
Yaakov, could you speak to that point as well? The move, is it more symbolic, or is it meaningful that the Israeli cabinet made towards the Palestinians ahead of this visit? This visit from a president who has said numerous times that he believes he may be the one to be able to finally broker a peace agreement in the region.
A peace agreement that he actually calls the ultimate deal. A president who also, I think, Israel's right-wing coalition thought would not want to be getting his hands dirty with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but seems to be very keen on trying to achieve a peace deal. So I think that those confidence-building measures, as they're called in the so-called peace process jargon, is basically meant to send a message and signal to President Trump that Netanyahu is serious, that he knows how to make moves towards peace with the Palestinians, he knows how to make compromises. But I think that what you'll see here over the next 24 hours or so is both sides, Israelis and the Palestinians, kind of angling for the blame game that will follow. I don't sense in Israel or on the Palestinian side a real belief that a peace deal is necessarily possible, but neither side wants to be blamed by a very unpredictable president and then feel his wrath potentially if President Trump thinks the Israelis are the ones who are to blame or the Palestinians are the ones to blame, and then they would come under the wrath of President Trump. So both sides wants to make the steps that make it seem, at least, that they are willing to make the bigger, or take the bigger steps for peace. But I don't know that when push comes to shove, if a deal is put on the table, that's a whole different ballgame.
And we're looking at live pictures of the president's motorcade as they have departed that part of the old city in Jerusalem after that historic visit to the Western Wall. Just quickly before I go, one final thought to you, David Rohde, and that is, remember what this president said earlier this year when asked about, okay, you're going to broker a deal. How are you going to do it? Here's a quote. I'm looking at 2 state and 1 state, and I like the one that both parties like. And then he went on to say, I can live with either one. I can live with either a 1 state or 2 state solution, which just floored a lot of folks.
It's frankly, it's not clear. I agree with Yaakov. How does he actually deliver a peace deal? It's incredibly difficult. There's huge opposition from the right-wing parties that Netanyahu relies on the Israeli side. The Palestinians are under, pressure to not back down. How do you deliver on containing Iran? I mean, that's the question. There's lots of talk. Are we going to bomb Iran? Who is going to use military force against Iran? So both sides, as Yaakov said, they want to give the president good pictures, and this is a productive and positive visit. How does the president deliver in the long term?
Now it's down to the details, and that is the important part. Thank you very much to all of you. We appreciate it. Please stay with us. We have a lot ahead coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back.